In that gratitude, let us take a moment to become very centered and very present here in this time and in this place. Perhaps feeling into your body, into your emotional body, your feeling body, and feeling that joy that is the nature of who we are. We are joy. We are life itself. And as we come together at a time like this, in a place like this, with the intention like this together to open to that truth and to honor that divinity, that God that lives within us, I invite each of us to open that place that receives gifts in us, perhaps our hearts, prepared and ready to receive whatever gifts are present here because you decided to come here today. Could be something said or not said, something felt or not felt. We don't have to know what that gift is, only to prepare us a place to receive it. So as we enter this awareness of the joy that we are, as life moves through us, as us, animating us, creating us in every moment, we are so very blessed to know this truth. Let us then take a moment in silence and feel into that place, that joyful place inside that is life, God, Spirit blessing us with life. And as the word of the day reminds us and invites us to take that joy, that expression of that God's self into our day today, into our lives every day, in gratitude for the awareness of the truth of who we are. And so it is. And so it is.
Thank you for that wonderful song, and especially the words. God will show us how, and I think one of the ways Spirit shows us how we can live our lives in a better way for us and for the planet is through wisdom teachings, such as we're going to be hearing about today. Allan Hardman has 20 years of experience as a practitioner and instructor of alchemical hypnotherapy and spiritual psychology. He also spent 10 years as an apprentice with Don Miguel Ruiz, the author of The Four Agreements and other books. And so this is what I'm talking about with the wisdom. He's a Toltec master in that tradition and brings his wisdom of the Toltec path to his work with spiritual counseling and emotional healing. So join me in giving him a warm welcome as he talks about the wisdom and the Four Agreements.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Well, let me start by asking how many of you have not read the Four Agreements. Okay, you have to leave. Or buy the book. Yeah, even better idea. And my book is the Everything book. The Everything Toltec Wisdom book. A lot of people came to me and said, you know, I read the Four Agreements, and it's great stuff, and I really think it would really change my life, but it doesn't say a lot in there about what to do, how to do it. What, you know, one of the agreements that we mentioned is don't take anything personally. And people say, okay, so I took something personally, what do I do? Am I bad? Am I wrong? Should I judge myself? Will that help? And the answer is very much so, no. So I wanted to write a book that had answers like that in it. So that's back here on the table too, and I invite you to look at that also. Miguel Ruiz also wrote a book called The Mastery of Love that nobody talks about as much, but it's a very excellent book. I have some here with me too. You know, when we talk about the book called The Four Agreements, people often say to me, oh, I read that. I don't remember the agreements. And if they do, and they can spout them off, then I ask them, what about the first part of the book, about domestication? And they say, well, I don't remember that. And for me, that is equally important, because talking about domestication and how we were domesticated as children, and the rules we were taught, and the beliefs that we took on, and the agreements we made about what's good and bad and right and wrong, and what's a good girl and a bad wife and all those kinds of things, those agreements are the ones we're trying to break with the Four Agreements. So the first part of the book is really the mastery of awareness, because it shares with us the problem. How do we get into this mess? And then the Four Agreements are an aspect of what we call the master of transformation, where we transform those old agreements into these new agreements. And we use the new agreements to simply highlight when we break them, or when we run up against them, we could say. We use that to say, wow, what agreement am I holding that's stronger than that one? Don't take anything personally, number 2. That's pretty powerful, because that means that you don't get hurt or angry or jealous or even excited and happy because of what somebody else does, or a long line at the bank, or somebody bumping into your car in the parking lot, or a standing ovation after a talk, or nobody coming to a workshop. It's all the same, and none of it has anything to do with us. We learned that it has to do with us. We were taught it has to do with us. You make me so angry. Oh, I do this, you get angry. I have to change what I do to take care of your feelings so you won't get angry, because you're taking what I do personally as though it was something about you. And so I need to change what I do so you won't do that, because if you're angry, it goes against me. Recognize that? So then and there's thousands of those kinds of agreements in our lives when we're little, and then we leave home and nobody says, well, you know, that was just us. You know, it doesn't really matter. It's not really true about life. It's not true about you. You didn't really cause any of this. It's not really your fault. We were just angry people, but you didn't really make us angry. Why don't we just take that off, leave it by the door, and you go out in the world and you have a happy adult life, happy relationships, marriages, and come and visit on Sunday once in a while. We'll be happy to see you. Anybody have that happen? So that first part of the book is very, very important, because if we're not aware, we don't have awareness of what it is we want to change about ourselves, we don't know what use the changing things are. I'm pretty linear about my work, and that's how I approach it. When I talk about the four agreements as a powerful spiritual path, what I'm really saying is that it's a path back to this truth that we've been sharing today already, that we are spirit, that we are that divine, we are the God force that created us and animates us in every moment, and each of us is that same God force, along with the plants out there and the earthworms and galaxies and the eagles and every single living being thing on this planet, and the planet itself and the universe is all animated, created and animated by that very one single source. And there's no place that that source ends and something else begins, something like you perhaps, who says, well, I'm not part of that. I don't belong to that. I'm defective. I'm flawed. If he really knew what's wrong with me, he would say I was divine because God is perfect and I'm not. And that message that I'm not perfect, being who I am, is the one that separated us from our divinity, and it's the prevalent message of our domestication as children. So our childhoods were kind of a de-divinity process, a divinity-ectomy, where our divinity was denied in us. The perfection, the beauty of the Creator and the creation as one thing was denied us because of what was being mirrored back to us of who we were. It's like being born in a crazy fun house of mirrors. That wasn't fun sometimes. And everywhere you look, there's a different distorted reflection of who you are. And you're trying to figure out who you are. And every parent, every teacher, every relative, every playmate's parent, every place you look, there's a different distortion, a different mirror of who you are and who you should be in order to be okay with that mirror. Make sense? We call this the dream of hell. Hell on earth, as opposed to heaven on earth. Because the hell on earth, hell is the place of judgment and fear, damnation. And that's really, I'm not talking about so much about us, but this is kind of theoretical about the people out there in the world. We carry that separation from our spirit, from our divinity, from God, into our lives because there was nobody to reflect back to us that truth in most of our lives. So our work as spiritual seekers, as spiritual beings, is to find our way back to that truth. Pretty simple. Except that we made thousands of agreements that we weren't that, and took on thousands of belief systems that we weren't that. We are that. And no matter how many times we were told a lie, no matter how many times we repeated that lie to ourselves, no matter how many times, because of the crazy mirrors in the unfun house, we went out and found other distorting crazy mirrors to look into to find out who we were when we were older, no matter how many distorting mirrors or lies that we believe, there's still lies and there's still distortions and they're still not the truth, and our work is to find our way back to the truth of who we are. Do I hear a hallelujah?
Hallelujah.
All right.
Amen. Amen.
There are many tools to do that, and we're sitting in a room right now which offers us that tools. The music, my God. I choose, my love is my choice. Maybe that choice was taken away from me sometime, but now it's not. Now we're adults. Now we have the capacity to say, I am going to choose love for myself. Love for myself. Not love to give out into the world so the world will be a better place because I loved it, because I fixed it, because I judged it and saw it was broken. But the love that I offer to myself in respect for that divine God self that I am. I'm pretty convinced personally that if a God, a creator that could make this entire universe, created me, he, she, it, knew what he was doing. And if he knew what he was doing, if he thinks he made a mistake, he could fix it. Yeah? If he made a mistake with any of us, oh, whoops, you know, he knows how to fix it. So if that's my assumption, which is agreement number 3, don't make assumptions. So that's my assumption about the power of that divine creator. If that's true then we all, by logic, are perfect reflections of that love, that creativity, that divinity, and perfect, just like the God that created us. The oneness, the wholeness. In fact, a lot of times the people I work with, my apprentices and students, they say, yeah, but I can't wrap around that. Perfect? I've been imperfect all my life. Now you're going to tell me I'm perfect? If you really knew me, you wouldn't say that. If you could look into my soul and see what my inner judge knows about me, if you could see what I look like in those crazy mirrors, you wouldn't say I was perfect. So I offer them this logic that this universe, there's only one universe that we know of, right? One universe. And that's a whole thing. And if there was anything outside of it, we'd say, no, you're part of the universe, because there's only one universe here. And so everything has to be part of it. Now, to have something imperfect or bad or wrong, you have to be able to judge it. Okay? Now, to be able to judge something, you have to have 2 things. A judge, a judger, and a judgee. You have to have somebody saying the universe is not perfect. But if there somehow could appear that outside of the universe, we'd say, oh no, you belong as part of the universe. So there's only one thing, and now there's nothing to judge the universe. So it must be perfect just by definition. My logic goes on to suggest that if the universe is perfect, a perfect whole, then there couldn't be an imperfect part of a perfect whole. You know, just go along with that? Mm-hmm. Okay? How can you have an imperfect part in a perfect whole? If that's true, if we accept that, these are the parts of the whole sitting in this room, and they have to be perfect. I rest my case. And if we are in fact perfect, and we recognize that, we are looking into our own clear mirror, reflecting the divine truth of who we are. That is the truth. When I was a spiritual seeker, like I stopped, I heard about Miguel Ruiz. I actually sent my wife at the time to check him out, because that's what we guys do, you know. And I don't want to look like I need help or anything. So go over to Sacramento, see if he's cool, come back to him. I'm fine, but maybe I could teach him something if he does something. So she came back and said, oh my God, you know. And what she was saying, I did not know his words, but he's a clear mirror. Because he chose love a long time ago and learned to be that experience of the divine, what we call love. And so I went to meet him and went, sign me up. Not really understanding what I was experiencing. It took me a long time to figure that out, because I had read Carlos Castaneda, the books, maybe some of you know those books. It's about this anthropologist guy in college that goes off and finds the Nog Wall, you know, the man of power in the desert, and he writes all these books about his experiences and taking psychotropic drug plants and leaving his body and having all these experiences. And he was a Nagual in the tradition. And Miguel Ruiz was a Nagual. And so I said, oh, I could come back and say, what are you doing these days, Alan? Well, I just apprenticed myself to a Nagual, you know, like Carlos Castaneda and his teacher Don Juan. And now I'm doing that, you know, it's pretty cool. And that lasted for way much longer than I would like to admit. Before I got that all of the stories he was making up, all of the workshops he was doing, all of the new mythologies he was creating was a trick to get us to come into his presence and see the clear mirror. And see our reflection in the clear mirror. It took me, like I say, longer than I'd like to admit, to get down off of my strategies to try to show him that I was a good guy that he would like, or that I got what he was talking about. Well put, you know, that kind of thing. Taking furious notes so that I could read them, and then the next time I went back, I'd know all the answers if he called on me to, you know. Trying to get it right for this teacher, this dad, this authority figure in my life. How can I get it right for him so he'll like me and approve of me? It's the agreement. If he likes me, it's personal. If he doesn't like me, that's personal too. So, and he's a man of great value. So in order to get somebody of great value to like me, I have to work really hard and make absolutely sure that he doesn't see how scared I am that he's not going to like me. Does he recognize any of this? Not in me, of course, but I mean in yourselves. The people out there. I mean you. After I got it, I really wanted to go back. And so I did 10 years with him of going back, and halfway through that, there was a kind of a core of us that had worked with him for half that time, and so he started pushing us to teach, and then when the Four Agreements came out, which was after I started working with him, more and more people started coming. At first, I was just reminiscing about this yesterday on the phone with an old colleague in the tradition that worked with Miguel, starting when I did, and we were talking about how, yeah, there used to be about 30 of us that would go to everywhere. We went to Egypt together, we went to the pyramids all over Mexico and the Yucatan and Honduras and Guatemala, and we just were out and about and doing these things with our very special group and our very special teacher. Some years later, we were going to the pyramids at Teotihuacan, which is the spiritual home of the Toltecs, north of Mexico City. October 4th, if you'd like to go along. And we filled the hotel with 80 people twice, back to back, 2 sections back to back. And by that time, I was helping to teach, so I would take small groups into the pyramids and work with him, and he would do the big lectures. So it was this evolution. But the point is that we seek out those clear mirrors. In fact, it may be that the divinity is trying to wake up inside of us and remember who it is, because we went to sleep and thought it was a human, a defective human who wasn't good enough, who had to work hard to improve themselves, even spiritually. How much of our spiritual work is based on judging ourselves that we're not loving enough, not good enough, not spiritual enough, not remembering our divinity enough, because we have to get it right to be okay. That's not divinity. That's not the Spirit. Yeah? Watch out. The trap of spiritual perfection. That's no more important and no more valuable to you than whether you're having a good hair day or not. It only starts right now when you say, oh, I hear the words I've been saying, I understand what they mean, I recognize that I am that God force, I am that divinity, and that is perfect by Allan's definition, and that means I'm perfect too, and there's nothing I have to strive to improve in order to be okay. Now what? Just put myself out of business. We can't succeed or fail in our spiritual life if there's no goal that we have to reach in order to be spiritual. And no, I often joke about the judge inside of us who's sitting in his black robes on his bench, you know, going, you didn't do that right, and you were late, and your friend's mad at you, and it's your fault, and all those kind of things. And at some point, you know, we improve ourselves, and we're being spiritual now, and we're moving into a new realm. So he takes off his black robes, and he puts on white robes, and he hovers about 3 feet off the ground, and he says, my child, you have not meditated today. And you are not going to reach your spiritual goals if you don't meditate more. And that idea you've had for 25 years to go to an ashram in India, you're putting it off. And if you don't do it, you're not going to improve yourself spiritually. And if you don't improve yourself spiritually, people are going to reject you. They're not going to like you. You won't fit in. And we take that personally. So we go and meditate out of fear. I'm scared I'm not divine. I have to get divine, but I'm scared I'm not. It doesn't work. So, the 4 agreements are designed to break many thousands of agreements that we made when we were little and gone through our lives, that we are not that divine perfection. In quick summary, they are, number 1, always be impeccable with your word. Now we're going to go very deeply into that this afternoon because almost everybody says, oh, that's like integrity, that's like honesty. I should keep my commitments. I should tell the truth. I shouldn't steal pencils from the office. Has nothing to do with what Miguel Ruiz means by impeccable. Most 90% of the people just they kind of distorted mirror, and it changes. He means, and he describes it right there in the book, to not use your word, which is your creative force as the divine, against yourself. It had nothing to do with pencils. The biggest way we use our word against ourselves is to judge ourselves as not being good enough to be divine, which we learned a long time ago. So, number 1 is the only thing you need. The other 3 support number 1. Okay, so I'm not going to judge myself. Well, how do I do that? Well, number 2 then, don't take anything personally. Because we learned that we're all dreaming, and when other people are saying you shouldn't have done that, and you can't believe that, and you hurt me when you did that, what they're really saying, that's how I'm, my distorted mirror, that's how I'm distorting you with my little dream of you in my head, and I'm describing that to you, and it has nothing to do with you. We can't see each other. We don't know what's going on. We twist it all up and then we send it back out like it's true. When we know somebody else is dreaming, we see their lips moving and we go, thank you for sharing. Number 3 is don't make assumptions. So another how-to, another practical thing. Assumptions are the mind going out and saying, oh, I have to be this way in order to make that happen. I have to control this. Assumptions are about the mind figuring out how to control the future and how to get it right. And what do other people need so I can be good so they'll like me? What can I give them so they'll take it personally so they'll like me? And we're constantly still domesticating each other saying, well, if you do that, I'm not going to like you. You have to apologize, change, squirm on the floor, and then I'll see. So we're always domesticating each other based on the assumptions and taking it personally and judging each other. The 4th agreement is always do your best. Now he's not saying try harder, you know, the judge is on you to do your best, you didn't do your best. He's saying you're already doing your best. If you are the divine, how much better could we expect the divine to do as you? The divine incarnated as each one of us on this planet, and God's in us and through us, and I think God's doing God's best. And if God's doing God's best with us, then let's not insult God by judging God's creation. Let us agree that we are always doing our best, being that divine perfection and unique perfection that we came here to be. And the minute we can do that, and every minute we do that, the judge saying we should do it better, should be more, shouldn't have done that, has no place to get us, because we're standing in that glory of the truth of our divine perfection. There's a lot of magic, a lot of spiritual magic in these very simple agreements. And if you've read the book, I invite you to read it over again. If you haven't read the book, read it 10 times. This is the work I do with people, individuals, groups. We have a conscious relationship circle that meets every Wednesday night in Sebastopol. A lot of things like that. There's some information in the back. Mostly, I want to just leave you with, you know what? You're absolutely perfect and beautiful just the way you are, and just the way you are not. So in that joy that we've been invited into today, and that choosing love that we've been invited in today, let us choose self-love, self-acceptance, deny the lies of the judge, whatever tools we're using, and experience the truth of the joy that we are as that life, as that divine, as that God force, living in us, moving through us, delighted to be us as part of creation.